Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to say thank you for watching in my presentation. Firstly, let me introduce myself. My name is Fikar Rahayu Putri. I am from English Education in University Panca Sakti, Bekasi. My lecturer is Leroy Holman Siahan, MPD. Please look at the picture. In this opportunity, I would like to present quantitative methods, components of an experimental method plan. An experimental method discussion follows a standard form: participants, materials, procedures, and user. These four topics generally are sufficient. In this section of the chapter, I review these components as well as information about the experimental design and first, participants. Listeners need to know about the selection, assignment, and number of participants who will take part in the experiment. Consider the following suggestion when reading the method section for an experiment. Random sampling. Describe the selection process for participants as either random or non-random. The participants might be selected by random selection or random sampling. With random selection or random sampling, each individual has an equal probability of being selected from the population, ensuring that the sample will be representative of the population. In many experiments, however, only a convenience sample is possible because the investigator must use naturally formed groups or volunteers. When individuals are not randomly assigned, the procedure is called a quasi-experiment. 1.2 True experiment. When individuals can be randomly assigned to groups, the procedure is called a true experiment. If random assignment is made, discuss how the project will randomly assign individuals to the treatment groups. This means that of the pool of participants, individual first goes to group first, individual second to group second, and so forth, so that there is no systematic bias in assigning the individuals. This procedure eliminates the possibility of systematic differences among characteristics of the participants that could affect the outcomes, so that any differences in outcomes can be attributed to the experimental treatment. 1.3 Matching participants. Identify other features in the experimental design that will systematically control the variables that might influence the outcomes. One approach is matching participants in terms of a certain trait or characteristic and then assigning one individual from each match set to each group. For example, scores on a pretest might be obtained. Individuals might then be assigned to groups, with each group having the same numbers of high, medium, and low scorers on the pretest. Alternative, Alternatively, the criteria for matching might be ability levels or demographic variables. Variables. The variables need to be specified in an experiment so that it is clear to readers what groups are receiving the experimental treatment and what outcomes are being measured. Here are some suggestions for developing ideas about variables in a proposal. First, independent variables. Clearly identify the independent variables in the experiment. One independent variable must be the treatment variables. One or more groups receive the experimental manipulation or treatment from the researchers. Second, identify the dependent variables or variables in the experiment. The dependent variable is the response or the criterion variable that is presumed to be caused by or influenced by the independent treatment condition and any other independent variables. Instrumentation and materials. During an experiment, one makes observation or obtain measure using instruments at a pretest or post-test or both stages of the procedures. A sound research plan calls for a thorough discussion about the instrument or instruments, their development, their items, their scales, and reports of reliability and validity of scores on past uses. The researchers also should report on the materials used for the experimental treatment. Experimental procedures. The specific experimental design procedures also need to be identified. This discussion involves indicating the overall experiment types, stating reasons for the design, and advancing a visual model to help the reader understand the procedures. Threats to validity. Experimental researchers need to identify potential threats to the internal validity of their experiments and design them so that these threats will not likely arise or are minimized. There are two types of threats to validity: internal threats and external threats. Internal validity threats are experimental procedure, treatments, or experiences of the participants that threaten the researcher's ability to draw correct inference from the data about the population in an experiment. External validity threats arise when experimenters draw incorrect inference from the sample data to other persons, other settings, and past or future situations. The procedure: a proposal developer needs to describe in detail the procedure for conducting the experiment. A reader should be able to understand the design being used, the observations, the treatment, and the timeline of activities. For example, Borg and Cole outline six steps typically used in the procedure for a pre-test, post-test control group design with matching participants in the experimental and control groups. First, administer measures of the dependent variables or of variables closely correlated with the dependent variables to the research participants. Second, assign participants to match pairs on the basis of their scores on the measures described in step 1. Third, randomly assign one member of each pair to the experimental group and the other member to the control group. And then the next, data analysis. Tell the reader about the types of statistical analysis that will be used during the experiment. Number 1. Report the descriptive statistics calculated for observation and measures at the pre-test or post-test stage of experimental design. These statistics are means, standard, deviation, and range. Number 2. Indicate the inferential statistical tests used to examine the hypothesis in the study. Number 3. For single-subject research design, use line graphs for baseline and treatment observation for abscissa, units of time, and the ordinate target behavior. Number 4. With increasing frequency, Experimental researchers report both statistical results of hypothesis testing and confidence interval and effect size as indicator of practical significance of the findings. Interpreting results. The final step in an experiment is to interpret the findings in light of the hypothesis or research questions set forth in the beginning. That's all. Thank you very much for your participation.